Today I want to tell you guys about the three main types of sensors that are found in cameras. Your smallest one is called a micro four thirds. This is a Lumix camera made by Panasonic, and it has a micro four thirds sensor in it. Then you have your Canon 70Ds and all the D cameras. Those have an APS-C camera in it, which is bigger than your micro four thirds. And then you have your full frame camera, which is the biggest one you get, other than if you get in a medium format, but for now we're going to skip those. So full frame is what everybody's shooting for. You get your best quality in most cases from full frame, but there are some advantages to the other sizes. On a micro four thirds camera, you're going to end up with a 2 times crop factor. So if you've got a 25 millimeter on a crop sensor camera, it's technically going to be a 50 millimeter, which that can help in cases if you're looking for a long zoom, like if you're trying to shoot 600 millimeter zoom, a 300 millimeter lens would technically become a 600 millimeter zoom. So that's a little bit of help in that one if you're looking for extra range without having to spend the extra money on just a full 600 millimeter zoom. The field of view on a micro four thirds camera is twice as narrow as it is on a full frame. The micro four thirds cameras have their own lens mounts, so you can't take and put a APS-C lens or a full frame lens on a micro four thirds. Some of the lenses are fairly reasonably priced, and some of the lenses can get kind of pricey, so they're still not dirt cheap. So don't think, oh, it's half the size, I can go get some dirt cheap lenses. It's not really like that. Some of them can be cheaper, but not necessarily. One thing about micro four thirds is they're all mirrorless, and that does help with the size and making them compact and easier to carry, and the weight is so much less. I could probably, this camera probably weighs 6-7 times what this little camera does. And one thing about micro four thirds is they're really good at video. They really nail the video market. Some of the Lumix and the Olympus cameras are fantastic with videos, some better than I think than some of the APS-C cameras. The image quality on the micro four thirds is pretty good. There's very few photographers that shoot just photography with micro four thirds. They're decent, especially up to 8x10, maybe 11x14. But when you get in low light and you start wanting large prints, you're really going to see those small sensors not shine like they should. It wouldn't be near as good as something compared to a full frame camera. So watch out. They have their advantages, they have their disadvantages, kind of like everything else in life. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at a micro four thirds camera. I know Panasonic, I love some of the Panasonic cameras, but they have some issues with the way they focus, so you have to really stay on top of the focusing. Some of the lenses you almost have to revert to manual focus to get those to work right. Now APS-C, that is going to be probably the most made sensor there is. And the sensor, there's your sensor size on a micro, oh not a micro four thirds, I'm sorry, on a APS-C sensor. On Canon, you have a 1.6 multiplication. So if you put a 50 millimeter on a Canon, you're turning it into an 80 millimeter lens. Most all the other APS-C lenses are 1.5 like Nikon and others. So a little bit less than 80. But they're cheaper to buy than your full frame cameras. The bodies are a good bit cheaper. And they do make lenses specifically for the APS-C cameras. And you can also buy a full frame, say a Canon L series lens, and it will work on your APS-C lens. You'll still get the crop factor, but it will work. So that way you can move it in some pro glass with your APS-C. Now under low light, these are better than the micro four thirds. They're still not going to compete with the full frame. But for people just starting out, you can get these used and you can get good prices on them, and you can go and shoot with an APS-C camera. They're great cameras. You're just not going to quite get the quality that you're going to get with full frame. But if you're doing smaller prints, people probably won't even notice the difference between the full frame and the APS-C. So now we come to the full frame cameras. Now these, if you have a 50 millimeter lens, it's a 50 millimeter field of view. So if you got a 70 to 210, it's a 70 to 210. They are large, they're heavy, they give you the best quality, and under low light, they're unbeatable. Some of the new Canon systems and Sony systems have just fantastic focusing abilities. They're really good at it. If you're shooting with a full frame camera and you've got a pro lens on there, you can make pictures. I've got some printed up to 30 by 40 that look just fantastic. So most everybody's goal is to get to the full frame, but now one disadvantage of a full frame, if you're shooting landscapes or whatever, and you've got a 200 millimeter lens on there, that's what it's going to be, is 200. If you put that same 200, if you put a 200 millimeter on a micro four thirds, you're going to have 400 millimeter. So there's a little bit of advantage if you're doing landscapes, if you want that extra zoom. I usually carry all three types with me to a wedding, because there's always a different scenario going on that you'll need a different lens. So that's kind of what I do. That way I've got all my bases covered. The cameras seem to be larger The body seems to be larger than your APS-C cameras. It's just a large camera. It's kind of a beast to carry around. After about 6-7 hours carrying one of these around at a wedding, you get tired. I've got a battery grip on here, but usually most people put pro lenses on there. And so your lenses are heavy, the body's heavy, the battery grip's heavy, and you got 2 batteries in there. So it's a balance. You know, if you want lightweight, I have given thought to recently putting a flash on a Micro Four Thirds camera and doing some of the stuff after we finish the cake cutting, because after that you got mostly dancing pictures. Nobody's going to be buying anything bigger than 11 by 14. And the APS-C, the weight is so much lighter than carrying around a full frame for the entire wedding that I'll just shoot the wedding, the rest of the reception, with a Micro Four Thirds camera. So they still do beautiful prints, and they have good color. I love the color science on the Lumix, so they're good. They're just, you don't want to shoot 30 people in the wedding party and try to blow it up to a 30 by 40 from from a Micro Four Thirds sensor. You want to go back to your full frame for that. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of heads up on how the sensor sizes compared to each other. Your Micro Four Thirds, they have their own set of lenses. APS-C is the most popular, and they'll do the job. You can shoot a full wedding with an APS-C camera, and then full frame is your ultimate goal for weddings. Models, you're going to get the best quality from those. So hey, if we're helping you guys out, hit subscribe and send me any questions you have down at the bottom. Thank you. Have a good day.